Hey folks, in this video we are going to be learning how to automate the delivery of an email using the onForm submit trigger in Google Apps Script. So what we're going to be doing is we are going to be taking responses from a form that will then populate a Google Sheet, and then we are going to program a script that will take the most recent response from the form and then deliver those responses to an email address. So you can begin this process by opening up a new spreadsheet and then going up into the Tools section and then creating a new form. I've already done that and I've populated it with the questions that I want to ask. And now what we're going to do is fill it out so that you can see what we're going to accomplish today. So I'm going to be using my developer email. This is the email address that you can access if you ever want to send me any feedback or questions or anything. And we're going to answer some of these questions about how we found my YouTube channel. And we're going to talk about how many videos we've seen. And then we're going to talk about more videos that I want to see made. So I'm going to say, I want more videos about email automation. And then we're going to submit this form. And after that data is submitted, it's going to populate the spreadsheet, which you just saw here. So we're going to get a timestamp. We're going to get the form responses. The timestamp will automatically populate. So if that is a data point you want to use, that's a very handy thing to have. Additionally, you can have it where the email is submitted without a person having to type it in. For those purposes, I just wanted to have that control for the example. So now we're going to go over to my email and we're going to hit refresh. And now you can see that I've received an email that says feedback from your YouTube channel. And you can see that we have all of the answers that I submitted, as well as some very basic HTML styling. I've already recorded a video about how to send emails. So if you're unfamiliar with the process of writing HTML or any of the code that we're going over today, that video is focused specifically on email sending. Today is going to focus on the on submit option. So with that out of the way, I'm going to delete that email, close up our example queue, and I'm going to go into our tutorial section. So this is an exact replica of what I just showed you. So if you don't have your form ready or your spreadsheet ready, pause the video. Otherwise, we're going to begin. So we are going to be going into the extensions menu, going into App Script. We're going to need to create 3 different files. The first is going to be our code file, which is typically where I store my main function. You're also going to want to create a new script file where we will be writing a custom function called getSheetById. And we're also going to create an HTML file, which we're going to call email. So we're going to begin in the getSheetById file. This is a function that I've used in many of my other videos. We're going to begin by calling it getSheetById. And we're going to pass it one argument, which will be a sheet ID. The reason that I create this function is because Google Apps Script only has a native method called getSheetByName. You can use getSheetByName if you want to, but I don't like to use it because when I submit it to my end users or my stakeholders or whatever, they might want to change the name of the sheet. And if they do that, then my script will break. This function identifies the identification number of the sheet that I want to access and pulls in that data regardless of what the name is. So if you want to learn more about that, I have a video about it on my channel. We're going to begin by accessing the workbook. And we're going to do this programmatically. We're going to declare a variable called WB, which I'm using as workbook. You can call it whatever you want to. We're going to use spreadsheet app dot get active spreadsheet. Then we are going to access all the sheets in the workbook. So now we're going to declare a variable called sheets, and we are going to access that workbook variable. and we're going to do wb.getSheets, and this is going to collect every sheet within the workbook. Now we're going to loop through the sheets variable. So we're going to do for, and we're going to do I, which stands for iterator in sheets. We're going to do a curly bracket, hit enter, and now we're going to see if the sheet ID matches the sheet argument, and that will be if sheets iterator dot get sheet ID double equal sign, and then we're going to pass in our sheet underscore ID argument that we have up here. We're going to hit space, curly bracket, enter, and then we're going to store the sheet name, and we're going to declare a variable called sheet name. We're going to have that set equal to sheets iterator dot get sheet name. Cool. And now we're going to go down 2 lines so you can see we're in our if statement here. Now we're in our for loop. We're going to hit enter, enter, go over to the left a little bit just so we're lined up, add a comment, and return the workbook and sheet name. So we're going to write return, and we're going to write wb.getSheetByName, and then we're going to pass in the sheet name variable. Cool. So that's a custom function that will return wb.getSheetByName. That way we can start accessing the data range and start collecting values out of our workbook sheet. We're now going to go over to the code script, and I'm going to begin by just clearing this out. I like doing that so I can kind of get into a rhythm, and we're going to say function, and you can call this whatever you want to. You can leave it as my function. I like to call it main. We're not going to pass any arguments to it. We're going to have a curly bracket, and we're going to hit enter. So we're going to begin by accessing the sheet with the form responses. So what we're going to do is we are going to declare this variable form responses. You can call it whatever you want to. And we're going to use that getSheetById function. So now what we have to pass into that is the sheet ID of the sheet that is storing our form responses. So you're going to want to go back to your Google Sheet, and you're going to want to go to the one that's called form responses. And you're going to go up here and you're going to collect this identification number. So it's, for me, it's this value. For you, it will be something different. You'll copy that ID, and then you'll pass it into your getSheetById function. This is now allowing you to access that sheet so you can start collecting data from it. So now we're going to collect the data from the responses sheet. So we're going to do var form data is equal to form responses. So you're going to access that form responses variable we just declared, and you're going to use get range. And we are going to just collect all the data to make sure that we're doing what we want to. So we're going to do 1 because we're going to start at row 1, 1 because we're going to start at column 1, and then we're going to do form responses dot get last row. And then you're going to want to have that open and closed curly bracket, or not curly, parentheses. You're going to do a comma, and you're going to say form responses dot get last column. You're going to go to the right of dot get range, and then you're going to do dot get display values. Cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to log this. So we're going to do logger.log, and we're going to pass in form data. And we are going to save our script, and you can see my function will now turn into main or whatever you've called your function, and we're going to hit run. We're going to have to review permissions. We're going to select our account that we want to access. We're going to go to advanced, go to email on submit, and then allow. Cool. So you can see that we're getting all of the responses in an array format, a 2D array format from our spreadsheet. So that's wonderful. That's exactly what we want to see. What we're going to do now is we are going to start sculpting this so that we can create our email. We don't want all of the data from our spreadsheet. We just want the most recent row. Now, in addition to that, I want to use the questions from my form data without having to rewrite them. So what I'm going to do is I am going to collect the questions. And I am going to put that into a variable called form questions. And I'm going to have that set to form responses. Just form responses. Don't put those parentheses there. Form responses dot get range. And then we're going to access row 1, column 2, and we're only going to go for one row. And the reason for that is because we want to collect how did you find out about my YouTube channel? How many videos do you watch in a week? What would you like to see me make? We don't want timestamp and we don't want email address. So instead of starting at column 1, we're going to start at column 2. And then we're going to collect all 3 of these columns from the first row. So when we enter in 1, we're starting at row 1. When we enter in 2, we're starting at column 2. We're going for one row, and then we're going to dynamically calculate the number of columns that we want to collect data from using the form responses dot get last column. But if we do get last column, that's going to return the value of the last column. So that means we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we don't want to go 5 columns because we're starting at column 2. So what would happen is we would return results for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we don't want to do that because we don't want to include timestamp and we don't want to include email address. We just want these 3 columns here. So if we want to get the number 3 to represent the number of columns that we want to collect data from, we need to subtract 2 because the form responses.getLastColumn is going to return the number 5. But really, we only want to go 3 columns. So we're going to subtract 2 from form responses.getLastColumn. We're going to hit dot. We're going to get display values. Going to add a parentheses, and now we're going to be done. Now, I want you to be able to see what's happening here. So I'm going to log things out. So we're going to do logger.log, and we're going to do we're going to copy form responses.getLastColumn. You don't have to do this, but I want you to understand what's happening here so that if you want to adjust your sheet, you have the ability to do so. So form responses.getLastColumn is going to be the value that we get when we just enter in form responses.getLastColumn. We're going to copy this. Well, I'm going to copy this. You don't have to do this. I just want you to see what's happening. Then we're going to get the result of what happens when we do -2. And then I'm going to do logger.log, and I'm going to do form questions so that you can see our results. So I'm going to hit run. And what you should see is the number 5, the number 3, and then just the questions. So the reason that this is happening is because when you use .getLastColumn, you are returning the number value of all of the columns. So it's going in here and it's saying, based upon the range that you entered, there are 5 columns. Once you subtract 2 from that, you get 3 columns. The result of getting the first row starting at the second column for 1 row for 3 columns is how did you find out about my YouTube channel? How many videos did you watch in a week? How many videos would you like to see me make? Okay? So we dynamically are able to collect 3 columns worth of data without having to enter in the number 3. So now what we're going to do is collect the responses. So we're going to declare a variable for form responses. Or no, we're not going to do that. Let's call, we're not going to collect the responses. We're going to collect the most recent responses. Well, response, I suppose. So let's, instead of calling this form responses, I apologize for the incorrect statement. We're going to do recent responses is equal to, and we are going to do form responses dot get range, and we are going to do form responses dot get last row, and then we are going to say we want to start at column 1, and we want to go 1 row, and we want to do form responses dot get last column, and then we are going to get display values. So in this situation, we want to bring in just the last row of data. So let's log it out real quick so that we can see what's happening here. We're just getting the most recent response, right? And actually, I'm going to change this because responses is misleading. But we can still look at our execution log. So on line 13, change your variable to recent response. Remove the S. That way you have just the first row of data, or the most recent row of data. So you can see here we have 924, where we wanted more than one video. We found it from YouTube recommendations and something, and it happened at 12:12. So when we go back into our log, you can see 924, 12:12, YouTube recommendations, more than one something. So we're just pulling in the last row. So the way that we're doing that is by using the get last row function. So that's the same way that we get a number value for get last column is the same way that we get it for get last row. So get last row will dynamically find the last row of data in your range. So we can use that dynamically in order to figure out what row we want to collect the data from. And then we're going to just pull in all the data. So we're not going to use all the data, right? Because we only have 3 form questions, but we need to access the user's email so that we know who to send the email to. What we're going to do now is identify who the email recipient is. So hopefully I spell recipient right. I think that's right. So our email recipient. So we're going to say var email capital R recipient. Apologies if I misspelled. We're going to do recent response, and we're going to access the array. So we're going to start at array value 0 and 4. So basically what happens is like once we collect our data, when we open up our execution log here, this is an array. Technically it's a 2D array, but it's one array where we have values that are comma separated. So when we're using .getRange, we can use the number 1 to represent the first column. But once data is passed into an array, once it's in this data type formatting, they become 0 indexed. 0 index means that the first value is 0. So when we're accessing this number here, which is the time, or this data, this is technically the timestamp here, right here. This has an index value of 0. This, the YouTube recommendations, is technically column 2 in our spreadsheet, but in a 0 index, it becomes value 1. That's because the starting value of the index is 0 for arrays. Within our spreadsheet, the starting value is 1. So when I enter in value 0, 4, what's happening is I'm accessing the first line in the array, which is technically this value here. So you see how there's 1 curly bracket, 2 curly bracket, 1 curly bracket, 2 curly bracket. That 0 is referencing the data array. And when I enter in the value of 4, what's happening is timestamp is 0, YouTube recommendations is 1, more than 1 is 2, something is 3, and then the email address is 4. So when I put in 0, 4, I'm accessing the first array and the value at index 4. Cool, so now that we have our email recipient, we can now start thinking about how to engage with our HTML template. So when you're working with emails, emails are structured within HTML. So we are going to need to be able to access the HTML service. So we're going to create a template object for dynamically, hopefully I spelled this right. Sorry if I mess anything up. For constructing HTML. Okay, so we're going to declare this as a variable HTML template, and we are going to set that to HTML service dot create template from file. And then we're going to pass in a string. So we're going to do single quotes, and then we're going to write email. So what this is doing is this is accessing this HTML file over here. So if you call your HTML file like anything other than email, you just have to use the name of the HTML file. Cool. So now what we're going to do is we are going to define HTML variables for questions. So we are now going to access the HTML template variable that we just created, do dot, and then I'm just going to call this question 1. And I'm going to have it set to form questions at index 0, so row 0, first row or whatever, and then I'm going to access that first question, right? Remember, for our form questions, we have only 3 values. So what I'm going to do next is do HTML template dot question 2, and I'm going to have that set to form questions index 0 and 1. So this is going to be a lot, like this is copy paste, but it might be good for you to just type it out so you get some reps in. Then we're going to do HTML template dot question 3, and we're going to have that set to form questions 0, 2. Cool. Now, there's probably a more efficient way to do that. You know, once you get a little bit more sophisticated and comfortable in this environment, you probably could loop through this. So you could declare these variables on a looping basis. That way you only have to write it once and iterate through it. But for this purposes, we're going to do it long form. So we're going to do define HTML variables for answers. So now we're going to access our recent response variable, but we're going to do basically the same thing. So we're going to write HTML template, and we're going to say answer 1, and we're going to have that set to recent response. We're going to have it set at 0, and then we're going to access 1, right? Because if maybe it's still in here in our execution log. Remember, we don't need 0, 0 because that's the timestamp. We're not using the timestamp. So our first question is in the responses, the answer is in 0, 1. So we're going to pull in 0, 1, and then we're going to follow the exact same format that we did. I'm going to hit enter just so that we have a little bit more room up here. We're going to do HTML template dot answer 2, and we're going to have that set to recent response 0, 2. And then we are going to do HTML template dot answer 3, and we're going to have that set to recent response 0, 3. Cool. So now we have variables that we can use within our email.html file. And what we're going to do is now evaluate the template and return the HTML output so that we can pass it to an email. So we're going to write evaluate the template and return HTML output. I'm going to hit enter so that we have a little bit of space down here. Tab it over, and then I'm going to declare variable HTML for email. And I'm going to have that set to HTML template dot evaluate parentheses dot get content. Cool. And now we are going to send the email. So we're going to hit enter, tab, and then we are going to write Gmail app, dot send email. Then we're going to do a parentheses, and we're going to hit enter. And the first value we're going to enter in is who we're sending the email to. So we're going to use that email recipient variable that we have up there so that we can dynamically reference who this email gets sent to. We're going to hit enter, and I'm going to get rid of the helper, and then we're going to set what our subject line is. So I'm going to say feedback from your YouTube channel. And then we are going to just kind of have for whatever reason, you have to put this like a warning in there or like an explanation. I apologize that I can't articulate it. If somebody else is seeing this and they know, maybe you can explain in the comments better than I'm doing right now. But I just read this email contains HTML. And it's just like it's telling people like if they can't read it, or if the HTML doesn't compile, then I think this message gets sent to be like, hey, there's some stuff that you can't see. We're going to hit comma, and then we are going to use curly brackets, and we're going to write HTML body, and then we are going to reference our HTML for email variable. And we're done with our code script. So now what should happen is we can send an email to our recipient, but we don't actually have a body to send to them, right? Like we don't have contents of a body. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit save. We're going to go to our email.html file. And now we're going to write the body of our email. So we're going to have some formatting, some minor formatting in here. And yeah, if you don't know about HTML, you know, it's probably a good thing to learn. There's great resources everywhere. You know, you can probably find a great YouTube video that kind of tells you about basic HTML. I'm going to do my best to kind of elaborate on things, like to talk about things, but not really elaborate on them. So we're going to begin by doing a less than sign. And we are going to write P, and then we're going to close it off. So you're going to have a less than sign of some character that denotes what the style is, or you know, whatever, and then you're going to do a greater than sign. So when we write P, that stands for paragraph. We're then going to open up another less than sign, and then you can see \P is in here. You're going to have to do that to close it off. So you can kind of see in our HTML we have like these pairings here, right? So it basically denotes where things begin and end. So when we enter P like this, we're saying this is going to be a paragraph. So we're going to write, hello, I hope this email finds you well. And then I'm a big M- person. We're going to hit enter, and then we're going to begin a new paragraph. We're going to close off our paragraph tag. That's the word. These are tags. And we're going to say enclosed is feedback from a recent survey. Did I spell that right? You took. You can find your answers below. I'll tell you, folks, I just have a way with words. So now what we're going to do is we are going to access our variables from our code.gs file. So all those variables that we're getting from our spreadsheet are going to be passed here. So I'm going to use h1, and we're going to close that h1 tag. And within h1, we are going to open, and you know what, I'm going to set this to bold. So I'm going to do a bold tag in here. And within here, we are going to do a less than sign. So like kind of a tag that we did, question mark and equal sign. Then we're going to reference question 1. And then we're going to have another question mark and a greater than sign. So these characters here are how you reference a variable from your HTML template. So when we established HTML template dot and then we wrote a name, that's how we're declaring a variable name that can be accessed within our HTML template. And the way that we connect the HTML to our code file is the less than sign, the question mark, the equal sign, the question mark, and the greater than sign. So when we write question 1 like this, it should populate the value that we've put into that variable. Underneath that, we're going to open up a p tag, and then we're going to close the p tag, and we're going to use that less than question mark equal sign, and then we are going to write in there answer 1 question mark greater than sign. And now it's pretty much just copy paste, right? So you can do that if you want to. I'm going to do it the long form so that we get a couple of reps in here, just in case you want to do it along with me. We're going to close that bold. We're going to close that H1, and then we're going to go back in here. Less than question mark equal sign question 2. And then we're going to have question mark greater than sign. We're going to hit enter. We're going to open a p tag. We're going to close our p tag. We're going to go in there less than question mark equal sign answer 2 question mark greater than. Cool. Now the last one, we're going to do an H1 tag. We're going to do a bold tag. We're going to close our bold tag, close our H1 tag. And then we're going to do less than question mark equal sign question 3, and then we're going to do question mark greater than, and then we're going to finish it off with another p tag, close our p tag, less than question mark equal sign answer 3 question mark less than. Cool. So we're going to hit save. We're going to go to our file. We're going to cross our fingers. And you know what we're going to do? I'm going to clear out my Gmail so that we have no new mail. Now we're going to cross our fingers. We're going to hit run, and we're going to hope that we're going to get, we have to review our permissions. So this is just allowing access to Gmail so that you can read, write, create, read, write, and delete emails using Google Apps Script. Cool. So we go over here. You can see we got a new security alert. We can just delete that. And then we go into here. And now we got an HTML email that has collected the last response from our form and has sent us an email. Wonderful. Everything is working as we wanted to. Now the last step is we are going to use the onForm submit trigger so that each time that a new form response is entered, we receive an email. So we're going to go over to the left of our screen in AppScript, and we're going to go to Triggers. We're going to select Create New Trigger. We are going to have it access the main function, and we want it to run on head, and we want it to come from the spreadsheet. Now we're going to select the event type. So we're going to go from onOpen, and we're going to go down to the last option, which is onForm submit. We're going to save our trigger. We're going to give it access. We're going to hit advanced. We're going to go to on email submit. We're going to allow. And now we have a new onForm submit. So the cool thing about the triggers tab here is that this will let you see some data. So you can see your error rate. You can see the last time it was run. And then we can go over to our executions over here. And you can see that thus far I've run scripts for the main function 4 times. And they've all completed successfully. And you can see that you get the duration of your runs. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to remove this security alert over here. I'm going to go back to my form, and I'm going to test to see if my onForm submit works the way that I want it to. So I entered in my email. I'm going to enter in Google search, or you know what, let's do other, and I'm going to say testing my script. I hope it works. We are going to say less than 1 video, and then we're going to say, did my script work? I sure hope it did. And we're going to hit submit. And we can see that we have recorded our response. We're going to go over here. You can see we now have this new line here with all the values that we just saw that I entered. We go over here, and this is a great sign, right? You can see the type, instead of coming from the editor, it's now coming from a trigger. And you can see that it completed successfully in just under 2 seconds. And you can see up top here, we have an email, and we go in here, and it seems that I incorrectly entered my email, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, we got these values in here. So we got less than 1, we got testing my script, I hope it works, did my script work? All worked great. I don't totally understand why this was happening. If you're getting this error, let me know. I haven't seen this in any of my testing. But yeah, I mean, I think to wrap everything up, what we accomplished today was we learned how to create a Google form and associate it to a script or to a spreadsheet. And then we learned how to write a script using the getSheetById custom function, and then write a basic HTML email. And then we learned how to use triggers in order to schedule our script to run every time that a new form submission happens. I hope you found this video helpful. A couple people in the comments section had asked about writing an email to one line of data in here. I have a couple other videos I think I'm going to make around this, but I always appreciate your feedback. Please keep it coming, and I wish you the best of luck in your scripting journey.